Okay, so why this strange title, Godzilla Architecture? Because today, apparently on November 3rd, in 1954, Godzilla was born. Well, this is how the news is on a site with on this day famous birthdays. It surprised me because Godzilla was not a real a real being, but a fictional one. But it's very possible that on the 3rd of November 1954, either the premiere of the film Godzilla took place in Japan, or at that time the idea of Godzilla was born. I don't know, but anyway, it is a pretext. It is a pretext by the way of Godzilla to talk about what I call Godzilla architecture. And what could Godzilla architecture be? But before I try to answer this question, let me read a short quotation, a thought that the great poet Rainer Maria Rilke had, and is connected to what we will see and will discuss. So this is what Rainer Maria Rilke wrote. Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage. Perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love. So I will read again. Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage. Perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love. Now, is Godzilla a monster who, beyond the fact that he frightens us, is in essence helpless and wants our love? It's possible. But the question is, why are human beings interested to begin with in monsters? And you can see this interest all the time on TV, in all kinds of films. There is something within the human beings that has a deep interest actually in someone like Godzilla. How would an architecture Godzilla-like or a Godzilla architecture be? Well, a very unusual architecture, because it would be an architecture that would not try to please. Usually the architect is a pleaser and the building is pleasing, or so we think. There are thinkers like Peter Eisenman who didn't think so at all. He thought that actually a significant architecture is not one that comforts us, but is one that unsettles us. So in that sense, perhaps a Godzilla architecture would pass the test of legitimacy that Peter Eisenman would require. Anyway, let's move forward. Here is Godzilla in the Japanese film that was created in 1954. Well, some think that Godzilla was a metaphor for the tragedy of those bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Others interpret it differently. This monster. One thing is for sure. This movie was made and it had a significant success. It was, very, very watched by many people. And there are variations of this theme. Other films and other, countries took this theme and developed all kinds of monsters or Godzilla-like monsters. It's true that somehow this original Godzilla, for me, visually, was the most potent and the most impressive. And somehow looking at these pictures, I see something of that helpless creature that Rainer Maria Rilke talked about. And yeah, you know, could we think and talk about fear and architecture? Could architecture be frightful? Would it be in any way helpful to human life if we imagine an architecture that is, you know, scary? This Godzilla that the Japanese made, I think is I don't know. I look at this image, and yes, it is moving, but I do feel somehow tempted to take upon me the message of what Rilke wrote, that somehow this monster needs affection, and maybe all monsters within ourselves need of emotion and need affection, need warmth. Rilke used the word love. Maybe indeed the monster could become a princess if the monster receives affection. And it's the paradoxical relationship between beauty and ugliness, between the monster and the princess. Even in folk stories in our culture, there is this theme, you know, where the prince finds in the forest an old lady, and he's kind with her, and then the old lady becomes a beautiful young princess, or vice versa, where the princess, you know, comes across in the forest upon a monster-like being, extremely, you know, unpleasant to look at. And because she's not afraid and she offers affection to that, you know, monster-like being, the monster transforms himself and becomes a beautiful prince. So, you know, this is a theme which runs in the mythology and the folk stories of, I guess, many people, the relationship between what we call ugly and what we call beautiful. And perhaps we should not forget this, that actually sometimes behind a beautiful facade hides less beautiful content. You know, for example, in the portrait of Dorian Gray, which is the story of a beautiful young man, but who was not beautiful within. And so you could have a person who is not so-called beautiful on the outside, but is very beautiful inside, and vice versa. So there is a relationship between, the dialectics between the beauty and so-called ugliness are a reality. And I think we should reflect upon that. Now, I will show works, as I said, done at the Institute of Architecture in Vienna, the excessive program, which was ran. That program does not exist any longer. I think for 6 years that program functioned, and it was run by the director of the program was Hernan Diaz Alonso, an Argentinian architect who now is the director of SciArc in Los Angeles. And the program was, they studied, so first of all, they were already architects. They already graduated from an architecture school. And this was a postgraduate program called Excessive Urban Strategies. And there were just a few students, really, between 5 and 10, or at the most 12, or almost 15, but no more. And the way they studied was like this. 1 semester and a half, they studied very carefully Maya. And then the other semester and a half, they did their thesis, you know, their project, also only in Maya. So everything you are going to see was done with Maya. And but it's kind of like a coincidence, because Maya was also is a software that was initially made for for the film industry. So there is some kind of a relationship over the years between Godzilla, the film, the movie Godzilla, and now we show projects done with Maya, which was mainly invented or made for animation, for film industry, and so on. I begin with this work by Jose Carlos, a Spanish architect, and we'll move. I'll show about 15 projects or so. Maybe I should have begun with another one, but that's the order it happened that I made. Is this a Godzilla architecture? Well, yes and no. Yes, because it is so very different from the other buildings around. Well, this project actually was made. It was a very provocative first year theme that Hernan Diaz Alonso chose to replace St. Stephen Cathedral in Vienna with a new image of with a new kind of a new cathedral. And this is what this architect did, and it's some might think that it's monstrous because of its tumultuousness, and it is almost aggressive towards the urban context around it. You see here in the visualize the plan of the old cathedral. But I think also, I mean, it's when I first learned about this, I thought it was very controversial. What do you mean to erase, to delete the famous cathedral in the center of Vienna and imagine another building in its place? But I think it's almost like a quest for a new kind of church, a church which is not explicitly a church, and which expresses the conflicts, the tensions, the dynamic elements of our life in the present, and also, of course, the technological side. And so you see here a dispersion. You see the monster, the architectural monster, getting wild, very wild, and provoking. I mean, compare these buildings with what's going on here. So in a certain way, in a metaphorical way, this is a Godzilla, and you are going to see other Godzillas. But again, the metaphor is it shouldn't be taken literally and simplistically, because then you would say, wait a minute, was the cathedral, the old cathedral, or are all cathedrals also kind of, Godzilla architectures? No, but there is a duplicity here, and because, the otherness of God, the otherness of the cathedral, if it is the house of God, could imply somehow also a reading in less comfortable somehow. It's truly about the otherness of the divine. Here is it is an otherness, but not necessarily of the divine, because the divine was dethroned, as Nietzsche would infer with his saying, God is dead. So if God is dead, we look now at this architectural, I don't know how adequately can be called a monster, but probably the people living in these buildings and the buildings themselves would consider this some kind of an architectural monster. It is done exquisitely. I mean, look at the scale. You see here the silhouettes of two human beings. To do something like this, you need to be extremely well, knowledgeable about Maya, and manually you cannot do something like this. You can of course sketch, but not to make a rigorous project in this way. So it is some kind of a monster. It's a technological monster. It's a provocation to the bourgeoisie, to the people who live placidly in these buildings all around it. It's also some kind of a scream, the scream of, maybe the scream of someone or something that is lacking a God. It's in the absence of God, you imagine something that is turbulent and restless and so on. And so maybe in this sense is an appropriate image for a building to replace the old cathedral. Let's not forget, Sigmund Freud was in Vienna. Psychoanalysis was, born in Vienna. So there are all kinds of, connections here. But as I said, this is a very unusual architecture, and it's only one project between some others that I just began with. You will see soon some other interpretations of the same theme and other themes. Now, Lindsay Cohen, also a student of and who graduated in this program, Excessive. Here we have a different kind of turbulence, a different kind of Godzilla or architectural Godzilla, but it is somehow, monstrous because it is, agitating us. It is an agitated building. Look at what's going on here. It's much more turbulent than anything done by Zaha Hadid, and as such could be interpreted as some kind of a, architectural monstrosity. So maybe with some poetic license, it does qualify for being called Godzilla architecture. This one also is done exquisitely, and indeed, if it was built, probably would have been the talk of Europe, if not of the whole world. The same with the previous project. These people envisioned, new kinds of architecture, and some of them quite radical and spectacular. And you'll see others even more so than this one. So the monster, the so-called monster, is attacking the city, but is attacking the city maybe, remembering Rainer Maria Rilke, not because it wants to destroy the city, but because it wants to receive affection. Maybe these buildings, could be interpreted in this way as well. They want affection. And when the affection is not there and it's just indifference, the building becomes wild, and so it is. You see, you have the contrast between the surrounding buildings with the Euclidean geometries, and then you have the vortex of this architectural animal, which wants to create conflict with the other buildings because it's restless. It's like an animal in a cage. It wants to break the cage. Cynthia Sanchez. Here we'll see a project even more radical and unsettling and unsettled. Look at this. Is it Godzilla? Perhaps an architectural Godzilla. You know, what did the architect think and feel when she made this? You know, it is a monster. It is an architectural monster. But if it was built, I'm absolutely sure it would have been, you know, impossible to ignore. And you'd ask why envision something like this? Well, you know, why anything? You know, why are we creating anything? Why are we writing? Why are we painting? Why are we doing movies? Why did the Japanese need to externalize the collective anxiety that followed Hiroshima and Nagasaki through the film Godzilla? Why? Art is creation. Architecture is or should be creation. This is, you know, the skeleton of some kind of a, you know, architectural monster that wants to unsettle us. And it was envisioned with the help of Maya by a temperamental Spaniard, again, a Spanish architect. Now, of course, the functionalist would be totally perplexed because, you know, the functionalist might even say this is not architecture. But I repeat, all these students in the excessive program were already architects. They already graduated from an architecture school from various countries. And they just wanted to explore the wild side, if you want, in Vienna. And they had plenty of opportunity to do so because Hernan Diaz Alonso, who runs now SciArc in Los Angeles, was the right person for this. For example, at SciArc, there is this kind of, you know, logo: to hell with regulations, we are going for the unknown. Well, this is exactly what is happening here. To hell with the regulations, we are going for the unknown. And it is the unknown that is explored here. And what else is the Godzilla, if not the unknown par excellence? Is the otherness of everything that the Godzilla symbolizes. And this building is some kind of an architectural Godzilla. Is this building searching for a new God? Perhaps, I don't know, but the turmoil belongs to our time. The degree of freedom and inventiveness is astonishing. You know, I mean, we do have to acknowledge that Hernan Diaz Alonso was able to provoke in these people visions that almost surely they would not have had in a different context. And yes, the medium is the message. In other words, Maya, used properly and known properly, was instrumental for doing these works. Now, Emre Igdem, look at this. Is it an architectural Godzilla? I think it is, very much so. Look at the turmoil. Look at the immense energy, the vitality of this building, which is mad. It's a mad building. But compare it with the buildings around. Indeed, this is a Godzilla. Now, why this architectural Godzilla is so unhappy? Maybe because, as Nietzsche said, God is dead. This project was made, again, in the past and in the present, but for the sake of the project, Well, in the past, the cathedral, the St. Stephen Cathedral was here. And this architectural monster, if I am to call it so, replaced it. Images from the inside. Again, we are dealing with a vortex of maybe dark energies, maybe not only dark energies, a turmoil, a tornado. Look at the plan, the site plan and the plan of the building. So this is a very unusual, unseen cathedral, if we are to call it cathedral. You might even think it's the opposite of cathedral, in as much as Godzilla is the opposite of angels. But the frontier or the distance between the ones and the other maybe is not so you know how to say, it's not so impossible to transgress. So yes, this architectural monster is provocative. What does it accomplish through being provocative? Maybe it is stirring us up energies within ourselves which are unexplored, and maybe again it's that monster that needs our affection in order to become the very opposite, as Rilke said. We have a word in Romanian, smell. And I think some of these works have something of an architectural smell, but that is a dragon. And I could use other words like Godzilla. Okay, another project by Van Xinu. And this one is not so tall. I mean, it is, but it is very threatening. Those who visited Vienna know that this is a building by Hans Hollein, which exists. The context is real, but the cathedral, St. Stephen Cathedral, is gone. And this monster, which is attacking this, front, the front of these buildings, is some kind of a Godzilla, architectural Godzilla. Look at it. It is threatening, and is meant to be threatening, and you wonder if this was built. I'm absolutely sure, anyone would have liked to go there and see it and experience it. This monster, this architectural Godzilla. Which can be built. I mean, you look at the images, the renderings are exquisite. It can be built exactly as you see it. After all, Santiago Calatrava did a cantilever longer than this one in Rio de Janeiro. So, from an engineering point of view, it can be done. Aesthetically, also, it can be done. It's the structure is ornamental here, and it can be built exactly as it is envisioned. But just imagine that it was built. It would look just like this. Would it be a Godzilla? Yes, it would be a Godzilla. And look at the view from the top. We have to acknowledge it. These people in this program created some astonishing works. Okay, another project, Tang Fei. So the architects who enrolled in this program came from all over the world, from various countries. So here is another, you know, more, I wouldn't call it a discrete Godzilla, but you know, it's more of a, you know, skeletal or more of a skeleton of a Godzilla, but because of its height and what is happening at the top, we could somehow you know, think of it. It's not so ominous. It's not so dark in its meanings and in its looks, but it has something of a, you know, the silhouette of a possible Godzilla. Or to talk in Romanian, un smeu arhitectural. The smeu, not in that sense of, you know, that you launch in the air and with some strings, no, in a different way. Another project, Moritz Mombourg. Again, you know, we are dealing with an architectural assault of the monster of Godzilla on the other buildings. You know, it's in a way, you know, you could say this is a metaphor for the artist. Here you have the so-called common people, and then the artist who has very thin legs and is actually fragile, but is wild. Is wild because the artist wants something else, wants a different world, wants to change the world. And these people here don't want any change. So you have the threatening aspect of art and of the artist. And in this case, the architect working with Maya. It's also the world of the unconscious, and perhaps the Godzilla symbolizes exactly this, the untold story, the world of the unconscious, in opposition to the so-called rational world and so on, the so-called normal life. The artist is continuously provoking society and himself or herself with a truth which is deeper, sometimes darker, sometimes more luminous, but it's about the otherness of art, the otherness of poetry, the otherness of a creativity which refuses to be controlled by, I don't know, norms, regulations, money, lucrative or mercantile interests. It's a revolt in a way, l'homme révolté, of which Albert Camus talked. You know, the building itself, and I read that there are interpretations of the Godzilla in the same way, that somehow the Godzilla was some kind of a being, a revolted being, and in its exasperation attacked cities and so on, planes. And actually it would be interesting to watch that film, Godzilla. Now you see here, this was the poster actually of the program for one, you say, the third year, excessive third diploma review, Hernan Diaz Alonso, new Vienna train station design by this person, Ki Feiyu. And you are going to see it here. Another architectural Godzilla from the same program, from the same school. This makes me think of, you know, in Romanian we talk about smeu and buzduganul smeului. Well, the architecture este o arhitectură zburlită, and as such, I think rather appropriate to symbolize, you know, some kind of an architectural Godzilla. Look what is going on here. Of course, you could say this is a fantasy, and in a way it is. But we don't have dreams. We don't have nightmares. Are they less fantastic? I don't think they are less fantastic, and we have them every night, sometimes even during the day. It is wild, of course, but you know, so is the unconscious, and so was Godzilla, and so was the unspeakable tragedy of the two nuclear bombings, atomic bombings that destroyed, killed so many people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So human beings are capable of creating unbelievable negative energies, eruptions of destruction. Look at the second floor plan. Well, it's, that's not how we conceive of architecture. But when you look at the image, how do you make the plan of something like this? And the section, this was supposed to be a train station, also in Vienna, the Westbahnhof, the West railway station in Vienna. Another project, Rafael Sanchez. Look at this. This was supposed to be a new, home for the collection of John Sloan, and in London. But look at this. Look at this facade. If we are to call it a facade, it's pure viscerality. Look at the building on the left and look at the building on the right. This is indeed some kind of an architectural Godzilla. Disturbing, no? But I'm sure if it was built like this, would have been the most interesting building in the whole of London. It is morbid. It is, dark, but it's hard to ignore something like this. In as much as it is hard to ignore if, let's say, in the city enters, Godzilla. On this street, this building is like some kind of an architectural Godzilla. It's represented very well, and in terms of rendering. But if it was built like this, I'm absolutely sure it would have been one of the most astonishing buildings ever built. So Godzilla represents otherness. It represents, in a way, the opposition of normality. But as such, these buildings also represent an opposition to normality, to whatever we understand by the word normality. The curious thing is that I read today, in fact, or yesterday, that Winnie Maas, one of the partners of MVRDV, and maybe the creative, the main designer in that important architecture group, he wrote a manifesto where he thought of creating a new layer around the earth called the sponge. And in a way, that's what we look at right now, is some kind of a sponge-like architecture. And you know, the vision of Winnie Maas was luminous. I mean, it was utopian. It is utopian. Here you could say some kind of a dystopia. But between dystopia and utopia, there is sometimes a very thin frontier. Cave-like interiors, that's what we look at here. Cave-like interiors. And cave-like interiors are also present in the graphic representation of that, the sponge that Winnie Maas talked about. You can read about it on the zine and or Arch Daily today or yesterday. Look at the section through this, you know, more modest in terms of dimensions, architectural Godzilla. Well, we think that walls can only be vertical and floors only horizontal. Well, you know, here you have different kinds of architecture, which definitely push aside that simplistic conception about walls and floors. Now, another work, Rodrigo Quinones, I guess, another Spaniard, for the same theme, the same program. It is indeed an architecture of excess, but you know, there is more to it, I think. There is also a certain pessimism, I would say, you know, a certain exasperation, and even a certain morbidity here. So it is in a way, some kind of Godzilla architecture, which tries to disturb, you know, the placidity of this street. And the interior, again, is cave-like. Look at the section. There are even some functions, you know, mentioned there. If indeed we are to have functions. So yes, I would say in a way these are you know, architectural Godzillas. This was made to replace, just as the first projects I showed, replacing the St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. This one is replacing the Sir John Soane's Museum in London. And you know, it's a different context, but I think the architects who did these projects did a brilliant job, and you know, they problematized the whole street through this courageous intervention, through this architectural monster, through this architectural Godzilla. The architectural language of the building does connect in a way with the incredible collection that John Soane had in his museum, which was also his home. But this is a contemporary interpretation, and you know, quite unsettling, you know, because yes, the 21st century perhaps is unsettling itself. Now, Lea Park, for the same program, another project also done with Maya. Yes, it is a little monster. It's not a huge monster, but it is a monster when you compare it with the buildings left and right. But that monster exists within us, in all of us, in one way or another. Maybe we cannot totally agree upon calling it a monster, but it's about the otherness of the id, to use the word of Sigmund Freud, that unconscious, which is not rational, which doesn't use the right angles, which doesn't use a t-square and a rectangle, which is complex, and is a turbulence. Is the world of emotions, actually. Now, yes, this architecture can be disturbing, it's true, but so was Godzilla disturbing. Maybe disturbing in its or his exasperation, that it was searching for love, for affection, and that love and affection didn't arrive to him. And so it might be again that Rainer Maria Rilke was right. The monster is asking for affection, for love, in order to become a princess. And if the arrival of love is postponed, well, the monster begins to destroy. Another project, Anna Pankovskaya. We are approaching the end of this presentation. Here we see something a little different. The last works that I showed, 2 works, are from the last year when the excessive program existed. So I guess some transformation also happened during those 6 years when the program was alive. It's still an architecture that is unsettling, but somehow the ominous elements or qualities are less explicitly there. It is almost as if the dragon or Godzilla got a little bit tired, and there is this fragmentation here, but it's not really a threatening architectural reality what we are looking at now. Maybe in disappointment, in disarray, and maybe even depressed, Godzilla decided to fragment itself, to disappear in a way through fragmentation. And we can see this even more in the last project that I showed. It is as if the monster is falling apart. It didn't become an angel. Maybe it lost the fight, it lost the struggle, and maybe it lost hope. Now, this is the last work that I show by Dimitri Kangelaris, I guess from Greece. And here we see the so-called monster becoming, you know, the ghost of geometry is just a web, you know, it doesn't have any longer substance in the sense it had at the beginning of this journey. You know, if there is something, a substance here, are the human silhouettes. Otherwise, it's just a labyrinth with you know, made of wires, mesh. It's literally, again, Godzilla dissolving itself into you know, these vectors of undecidability, this you know, web of relationships and vectors that don't know where to go. The monster either receives some affection and is in the process of changing identity and even looks, but it's in the process, didn't yet do it, or lost the battle and lost the hope, and it becomes what you look at here. Thank you.
Mulțumim frumos, a fost